Hi there, it's Paul from CCA, and today we're going to talk about changes in legislation which now unfortunately negates the asset protection originally associated with a trust or a holding entity. In essence, if you're still using a trust or a holding entity to protect your business assets and you haven't updated your structure, those assets are more than likely no longer protected. So today we're going to discuss what are the changes in legislation affecting your trust, why your trust no longer protects your business assets, and what you can do to start protecting your business assets in your trust for as little as $6. So stay tuned, this is really important information. Now, before we get started, if by the time we get to the end of this video, you've appreciated the information that was shared with you, what I'm going to ask you to do is to share this video across your various social media platforms. The idea being that the more people that become aware of the potential issues around credit management, the better it is for all Australian businesses. But hey, let's get into it. You may or may not be aware, but there's been some major changes in legislation which has now forever changed the way a trust provided protection for your business assets. Over the last 30 or 40 years, when traditionally when a business has been set up and there's some assets that have been identified that would need to be protected, what a business has done is they've set up their trust or their holding entity, which holds all the assets of the business, and then they set up their trading entity as a separate entity. The idea being that if the trading entity got into trouble, then the assets were protected or owned by the trust, so the owners of the business would still have essentially their assets. However, since the change in legislation, that's no longer the case. Of course, the legislation I'm referring to is called the PPSA, or the Personal Property Securities Act. Along with that legislation also came its register, Personal Property Securities Register. The register is the only place you can go when you want to register a security interest, i.e. ownership in goods or equipment. So the key takeaway from the introduction of the PPSA is that title no longer exists without being registered on the PPSR. To put this into perspective, if you were to go for a car loan with the bank and the bank didn't register their security interest on the PPSR and you didn't pay your loan repayments, the bank would have no legal ability to take back ownership of that vehicle. So the same thing applies when it comes to your trust or holding entity. So if you were to find yourself in the unfortunate position of your business or your trading entity getting into financial difficulties and a liquidator is appointed and your trust hadn't registered that equipment that is in the business on the PPSR, then the liquidators would automatically own those assets as collateral of that business. Which begs the question, how do you protect the assets in your trust or holding entity in case your trading entity was to get into trouble? Well, under the legislation, there's two key requirements for you to be able to register valid, legally binding PPSA registration. And that is, the first thing is there must be agreement between the two parties, and that agreement must incorporate the appropriate legislation, giving your trust, in this case, the legal ability to be able to register a security interest on the PPSR, and that agreement must be signed by the two parties, i.e. must be signed by the trust and must be signed by the trading entity. Once you've got that agreement in place and you've got all the appropriate legislation included, you can then register it on the PPSR. Now, that agreement is called a chattel lease. Now, a chattel lease is basically just a lease agreement that includes the appropriate legislation, but also has a list of chattels. And the list of chattels is all the equipment that is sitting in your trust that you're leasing to your trading entity. And it might be your computers, it might be your vehicles, it could be your machinery, it could be things like your forklift, basically any assets of the business that you're wanting to protect if your trading entity was to get into trouble. Now, once you've got your chattel lease finalised, all you do is you register that on the PPSR. It costs you $6 and it lasts for 7 years, so not a very large investment. And don't worry about your asset list changing. Everyone understands that businesses will buy new equipment and sell off old equipment. All you have to do is update your asset register. We can help you out with all of that. That's what we specialise in. Now, we certainly don't expect you to understand everything about the PPSR. We do have additional videos that go into the PPSR and explain it as an overview or in quite detail. But you as a business owner really just needs to decide whether you want to start protecting the assets of your trust or holding entity in case your trading entity gets into financial difficulty. And to be honest, the investment required to set up a chattel lease is not that great. You can spread it out over 6 or 12 months. It's going to cost you maybe a couple of $100 a month. The most important thing is that you get your chattel lease in place, you get it registered on the PPSR, and your assets in your trust or holding entity are then protected. Now, that probably brings us to the close. We do understand that you're probably going to have a few questions, or quite a few questions for that matter. So if you do have a few questions, you want to have a bit of a chat, simply hit the link below, which is called Contact Us. We'll get back to you as soon as we can, answer any questions you've got, talk to you about your particular situation and what might best work for you, and then you can go from there. And that's at absolutely no obligation. But one thing I am going to ask you to do is, if you remember from the beginning of the video, if you found this information valuable and think there's other people that could benefit from hearing about it, I'm going to ask you to please share this across your various social media platforms. The more people who hear it, the better it is for everyone. But that's all from me. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day. Please stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.